I'll be reading and explaining the first Amud of Masechet Makot of Ben Amud Aleph and explaining the different aspects of it, the concepts. And this is especially for those taking the JSAT in Talmud this year, which is on this material. So the Mishnah starts off with the concept of Edim Zomamin. Edim Zomamin are witnesses that say something not true about someone else. They say it in Beit Din. And the Torah usually says, V'asitem lo kasher zamam la'asot lachiv. Whatever someone tries to do in Beit Din by lying to court and trying to get that on someone else, we do back to them. So for example, in general, if someone came and said in Beit Din, if someone came and said, Chaim owns Moshe $1,000 and it's not true, that lying witness would have to pay $1,000 to Chaim because he tried to inflict that loss on him. If it would be even something as serious as a capital punishment, if witnesses try and get someone the capital punishment by saying that they're a murderer, and then it turns out they're lying, then they would get that same punishment instead. So the Mishnah starts off and says, Keitzad edim na'asim zomamin. How do we have this law of edim zomamin? And then the Mishnah goes on to say, Meidim anu beish ploni shu ben gurusha or ben chalutza. We testify that a certain person is not a Kohen. How is it possible that he's not a Kohen? Because even though his father is a Kohen, if a Kohen marries a divorced woman or a woman that had chalitza, then his children are not going to be Kohanim because he broke the law and he married someone who is a grusha or chalutza, then his children are not going to be Kohanim. So the witnesses, the conspiring witnesses, come and say a certain person is not a Kohen because his father married a grusha or chalutza and therefore he is not a Kohen. So the Gemara says, we don't say that the witness who lied should become a non-Kohen. If, for example, he himself is a Kohen, we don't say he should become a non-Kohen. He gets lashes in Beit Din for doing something like this. Or, for example, so meaning it's not the punishment that you think he would get. It's not that he's getting exactly what he tried to give the other, but rather there's an exception here, and instead of making the witness a non-Kohen, he gets Makot. Or alternatively, if we testify that a certain person is Chayav Galut, he killed someone by accident and therefore he has to go live in the Ir Miklat, we do not say that this person will get Galut instead of him, ela loke 40. Rather, he gets 40 malkot. So again, in a case where a witness was lying and he tried to say that a certain person has to go to the Ir Miklat, has to go to the city of refuge because he killed someone by accident, we do not say that he goes and gets galut instead of him, but rather he gets 40 malkot. So then the Gemara continues. Hakeitzad. How so? How does the Mishnah make any sense? It says, the Mishnah starts off, implying that it's about to explain how people become edim zomamin, right? How do witnesses become zomamin? And rather, it says something completely different. It says something that's the exception. It speaks about ben grusha ben chalutza. So the Gemara says, you should have started off the Mishnah by saying, I'm about to explain the situations in which the edim do not become zomamin. A situation in which the witnesses do not become edim zomamin. So the Gemara is saying the Mishnah is poorly worded. Why are you telling me keitzad edim nasim zomamin? Judging on the rest of the Mishnah, you really should have said keitzad eina edim nasim zomamin. How do the witnesses not be zomamin? Ve'od, furthermore, mide katani lekaman. Since the Mishnah later on says, אבל אמרו להם, היאך אתם מעידים, שהרי באותו יום אתם הייתם עמנו במקום פלוני, הרי אלו זוממין. The Mishnah later on says that the only way lying witnesses get the punishment of edim zomamin is not if they're proven to be lying, but rather if we can prove they were in a different location. That is how they become edim zomamin. That is the real rule. That's the rule, not an exception, right? It's the rule. So the Mishnah, the Gemara is saying, Michlal de'elu en zomamin. That implies that our case is not zomamin. So if the next Mishnah is actually explaining the laws of edim zomamin, aka imanu hayitim b'makom ploni, you were with us at a different place, then our Mishnah isn't even explaining it. Our Mishnah is explaining the exceptions, ben grusha, ben chalutza, or alternatively galut. That's what it's doing. So why are you telling me this is the rule? Actually, the Mishnah later is the rule, to be honest. So the Gemara continues on, and it answers this. Tana hatamkai. No, don't get confused. The reason our Mishnah is worded in such a unique way is because our Mishnah is a continuation. The Tana, the rabbi who wrote our Mishnah, his mind is still on the previous Masechet. The previous Masechet is saying, Masechet Sanhedrin, starts speaking about exceptions to the laws of Edim Zomamin. And since that Mishnah speaks about the exceptions for the laws of Edim Zomamin, therefore our Mishnah continues on that route, and then it goes into say the actual rule, which is that the regular Edim Zomamin has to be Imanu Aidim. So the Gemara says, Tana Hatamkai, our Mishnah is over there, his studies are, he's thinking of the previous Masechet Sanhedrin, which says, Kol HaZomamin makdimin laotam mita, chutz mizomamei bat kohen u'boala, she'en makdimin laotam mita, ela lemita acheret. So he's really thinking about a different location. So then we continue. So what he's saying is, over there in Masechet Sanhedrin, we started speaking about the exceptions, where you don't exactly give the edim the exact punishment they tried to give someone, so that our Mishnah just continues and says, and there are cases where you don't give any kind of punishment similar to what they tried to do. Rather, you give them Makot. V'yesh, this is line 5 in the Sefaria. V'yesh edim zomemin acherim she'ein osim b'hem dina zama kolika ela marikot 40. There are certain situations where you don't give them anything reciprocal. You don't give them anything of what they tried to give others. Ela malkut 40. You give them rather 40 malkot. Keitzad, how so? Meidim anu beish ploni shu ben grusha ben chalutza. If they say we testify against a certain person that he's the son of a grusha or chalutza, meaning he's the son of a kohen who married a grusha or chalutza, which he was not allowed to do. We don't say that the Kohen will, the witness who happens to be a Kohen, we don't say that he's going to get the same punishment and become a non-Kohen. Rather, he gets 40 malkot. That is line 6. That is line 5 in Safari. Now line 6, once we've settled the language of the Mishnah, opens a new horizon. And that is, how do we know this? How do we know that if someone testifies that someone's a ben grusha ben chulza, we don't give him the exact same punishment. We don't make him also a non-Kohen. How do we know that? So the Gemara says, Menahan Emili, where do we know this from? The Gemara answers, Amar Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi, Amar Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish. Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi said, in the name of Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish, De Amar Kra, as the pasuk said, Ve'asitem lo ka'asher zamam. It says you should do to him as he conspired to do. Ve'asitem lo ka'asher zamam. Lo ve'lo lezar'o. We learn from the pasuk that you can only punish him, but you cannot punish his children. Lo ve'lo lezar'o. So then the Gemara says, okay, fine. I take your word for it. You learn it from the pasuk. Lo ve'lo lezar'o. You're only allowed to punish him, not something that's going to affect his children. And since if you're going to turn the false witness into a non-Kohen, his children will also not be Kohanim. You can't do that, because then if you punish him, you're actually also punishing his children. And the pasuk says, Lo ve'lo lezar'o. You're not allowed to punish the children of E'ed Zomem. So the Gemara says, okay, I accept that. However, ve'lifselu ledidei ve'lo lifselu lezar'ei. Why don't you then disqualify him and don't disqualify his children? Right? So fine. So why don't you just disqualify him? And then you won't have a problem with the pasuk. You can still make him a non-Kohen. So the Gemara says, Ba'inan kasher zamam la'asot ve'leka. We need to fulfill the pasuk of kasher zamam la'asot, as he has conspired to do, ve'leka. And that is not here. So if you're only going to make the witness into a non-Kohen, and not his children, if you only make the lying witness into a non-Kohen, but not his children, that wouldn't be justice, because he, when he was lying, was trying to make the other guy and his kids not Kohanim. So now you're going to punish him by only making him a non-Kohen? That's not fair. That's not measure for measure. So therefore, we don't bother altogether, and we don't go down the route of making him a non-Kohen. That is the end of line 6 in the Sefaria. Next, the Gemara continues. Bar Pada says, actually, you don't need a pasuk. You don't need a pasuk to learn that you don't make the lying witness into a non-Kohen. Why? I can learn this logically. Kal v'chomer. Bar Pada omer kal v'chomer. I can learn this logically. Uma ha-mechalel eino mitchalel. Someone who is a Kohen and marries someone he's not allowed to. He does not become a non-Kohen, his children become non-Kohanim. So he turned his children into non-Kohanim, and yet he remains a Kohen. Ha-mechalel, someone who made someone else a non-Kohen, eino mitchalel, he himself does not become a non-Kohen. So ha-ba lechalel velo chilel, so the witness who just tried to do that, who just tried to make the kids non-Kohanim, they for sure should not get this punishment. So it's logical, if you don't punish the actual Kohen who married someone he's not allowed to, why don't you punish him for making his kids non-Kohanim? You don't. So for sure you should not punish the witnesses who only attempted to do that. Kal v'chomer, if you don't punish the guy who actually does it, kal v'chomer, you shouldn't punish the person who only attempted. That is Bar Pada's kal v'chomer. He says, my logic, you don't punish the guy who actually does it, the Kohen who marries someone he's not allowed to, and then his kids are not Kohanim. You don't punish him. So why would you punish just the Ed Zomem who just attempted to do that? That is Bar Pada's Kal V'chomer. So then this Kal V'chomer gets attacked. Matkifla Ravina attacks this premise. Im ken bitalta Torat edim zomemin. If you actually think this logic is something we should follow, then you completely overturn the entire concept of edim zomemin. The entire concept of edim zomemin would never exist with your logic. Why? Because there's a very interesting law with edim zomemin. We only punish them, the edim zomemin, before what they testified, what they attempted to do was successful. But if they were actually successful, if the Beit Din went on and killed an innocent man because they were lying, and then we find out after the Beit Din already did what they did, that the witnesses are edim zomemin and that they were in a different country at the time, we don't give them we don't give them a death penalty the way we would if we would catch them before the execution. So, therefore, if in a case where actually the guy got the death penalty, we don't punish the edim zomemin, so it would follow logically, it would follow logically that if someone just attempted to do it, he should for sure not get a punishment. And we know that's not true. So obviously your logic is not true, because you see in the case of edim zomemin that attempting is actually worse than succeeding. So you, Bar Pada, don't tell me that the reason we shouldn't give the guy, the lying witness, the punishment of becoming a non-Kohen is because, don't tell me we should do it because it would be a Kal V'chomer because he only attempted. No, you see from the other cases of edim zomemin that attempt is worse than actually doing it, than actually if he was executed. The Gemara concludes, it becomes clear, as we originally said, that the real reason we punish, we don't turn the lying witness who is a Kohen into a non-Kohen, the real reason is, we don't do that is because we learn from the Pasuk, lo velo lezaro. We don't learn it from Bar Pada's Kal V'chomer, we learn it from the Pasuk and not from the Kal V'chomer, because the Kal V'chomer can be disproven. I hope that was helpful, and be'atzlacha.